Hey guys, Ms. Parnell back for our second video on the second section of notes in psychological disorders. So this is about anxiety disorders, OCD, and PTSD. And just a reminder, this is the long video with pauses so that you can write with me and go through. So first off is a crash course on anxiety disorders and OCD. So it's a really good one to check out. If you haven't watched it yet, just go on and pause this, go watch that, and then you can come back to the notes. So there's three types of anxiety disorders. There's generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and phobic disorder. And basically it's because they all have this similar feeling of anxiety. So if you're sitting here going, what is anxiety? It's just kind of this like extreme nervousness. The way I always describe it is it'd be this feeling building up inside of you like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's like you can't breathe, your heart's racing, you can't think, you can't make sense of anything, you feel like you're gonna suffocate, like what's going on? That's anxiety. We all feel it from time to time. Things make us nervous, things make us scared. We get, kind of stuff. But again, unless it impedes your life, it wouldn't be a psychological disorder. And in these three cases, they do impede people's life. As you can see here, anxiety is a part of life. We all feel it. If you had to speak in front of a class, maybe if you had to film yourself like this, like me, put it on YouTube for the world to see, might make you really, really nervous. Looking down, if you're on something really high and you like look down, you're like, oh man, waiting to go in and play in a game and you're like really nervous on the sideline. So it's like it's got this mental component, but it's also got this physical component of like increased heart rate, increased breathing, stuff like that. But thankfully for most of us, it's just, it's a part of life. It's not something that impedes us. And then there's going to be a video on all these disorders for you to go watch. So kind of like we talked about earlier, like with sadness, like where do you draw the line? We talked about like grief and sadness and clinical depression. Remember, it was like, well, if the person won't get out of bed and they're sad, that could be clinical depression. Well, then what if I told you something bad just happened and they were just grieving and they were just sad? And then all of a sudden we're like, well, it's not really the same thing. Medicine's not going to really help that. It's kind of the same thing with anxiety. Like, where do you draw the line with nervousness and anxiety? And anxiety can be helped with medication. But again, only if the person's suffering from like clinical anxiety. If it's just something going on in life, you're not going to take a pill and not be nervous, like pop a pill and then you're not nervous and you're fine. Like, it doesn't always work out that easily. So we have to kind of figure out what true anxiety is. So here's your definition for anxiety disorder. So there's the psychological disorders. There's several of them. So psychological disorders characterized by distressing, persistent anxiety or maladaptive behaviors to reduce the anxiety. So distressing right here, you know what distressing is? It's like bad. It's not good. It like doesn't make you feel good. So it's like the anxiety is like worrisome and bad and consuming. Persistent is always. So again, it's like popping up all the time, not just time to time, like maybe in a normal person. It's all the time. And maybe there's not even a trigger. Like it's just happening out of the blue, out of nowhere. Or the maladaptive behaviors. This one's going to go more with OCD that you'll see in a minute. So these behaviors that harm yourself. And again, like we talked about in the first one, like you don't have to like physically harm yourself. A lot of us think of that like, oh, you physically hurt yourself, you cut yourself. But it doesn't have to be that. Like if you don't go to work and you don't have money, you're harming yourself. If you don't maintain your relationships, your friendships, your marriage, parenting, all those, that's going to harm yourself. It's going to harm your life and it harms other people. So that's maladaptive. And so sometimes they'll do behaviors like not going somewhere, not doing something. Well, that's going to harm them. And there's a video for generalized anxiety disorder. Generalized anxiety disorders on the next slide. So let's write down the definition for anxiety disorders. You hear music in the background. That is Frozen 2. It is all that is keeping my children away from me right now. So, of course, I would choose to get quiet when they're singing a song, so you'll hear that. So, psychological disorders characterized by distressing, persistent anxiety, or maladaptive behaviors. That reduce the anxiety. Okay. So now let's go through all three of them: generalized, panic, and phobic. So generalized. This is an anxiety disorder in which a person is continually tense, apprehensive, and in a state of autonomic nervous system arousal. So tense. you tense up, right? And so they feel like that. Like they're not trying to like flex and tense up, but it's just like their body is. Apprehensive is again that nervousness, that like unsure feeling, and it's like very nerve wracking. And in a state of autonomic arousal. Basically, what that means, go back to Unit 2, talked about all the nervous systems. And remember, there was the autonomic nervous system had the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And remember, it would get aroused in the sympathetic, and it was like all these things like your pupils dilated, your heartbeat, your breathing increased, started making adrenaline and stuff, secreting glucose, and like certain things shut down in your body. It's that. So remember, we were talking about like sympathetic is like when someone you would have sympathy on someone in a situation like this. And parasympathetic was the one that calmed you down. So what they're talking about here is like your body goes through those things, like, and you can't stop it, like your heart rate or the breathing or the pupil dilate. Like these things happen. You're like aroused and just like super nervous and super tense and super freaked out, and you can't like get yourself to calm down. All right, so let's write that one down. So generalized anxiety disorder, an anxiety disorder in which a person is continually tense, apprehensive, and in a state of autonomic nervous system arousal. If you want to put like the sympathetic nervous system with that, if that kind of helps you, you can put that. So for this, it doesn't really pop up with anything in life. Okay. So for some of us, certain things make us scared, make us nervous, this, that, and the other. And you can pinpoint it. And if that thing's not happening to you, you're not feeling anxiety. But for someone with generalized anxiety, it's just life. Life makes them feel like this. Sometimes it's really hard to identify the trigger. And if you can't really have one common trigger or one thing that you know that you can avoid, you're not going to be able to avoid it. It's always going to be there. The tension comes, and sometimes it's not linked to a certain thing. Sometimes it's just that's how their body responds. So here are your symptoms. And for symptoms for all these, like they don't have to have every single one. They may have some combination. They may have every single one. They may just have a few. Maybe this time they have more, next time they don't. It just kind of varies. So here are the symptoms. So I do want you to write down the symptoms, okay? So excessive and uncontrollable worry, okay? So excessive and if you want to put these in a paragraph like this, you want to list them, there'll be symptoms for pretty much all the psychological disorders, and you can pick how you want to do that. So excessive and uncontrollable worry. Jittery, you know what it means to be kind of jittery, like on edge. Kind of same thing with agitated, similar words. Agitated is just like the littlest thing drives you crazy, sets you off. You're just like you're on edge kind of thing. Sleep deprived, because their body is so aroused that autonomic nervous system's kicked in. You can't relax and go to sleep and shut your brain off and stuff like that, which also leads to being hard to concentrate because their brain is just flooded with worries, what ifs, what could happen, scenarios, worst case scenarios, that type of thing. Because of the excessive worry, they can't really think of anything else, and they can't think of anything else long enough to like really focus and concentrate. And sometimes it can be accompanied with depression. Not always, but sometimes, especially if you lived like this, man, I get old really, really fast. And so they know it's not normal. They know they shouldn't live like this. It does get old really fast. And so it could lead to a state of depression. Any of these things have to be going on for about 6 months or more. So make sure you put that down. If you want to put examples of autonomic nervous system arousal, I'll let you decide. If I explained it well enough that you feel like you know it and you remember it from Unit 2, that's fine. If you're like, I still don't have a clue what it is, then maybe write a couple down. So I'll write some down. So autonomic system arousal examples. So remember we talked about these things earlier. Perspiration, so like excessive sweating, the heart rate increasing or racing, The breathing going up, the heavy breathing. Sometimes there's even like twitching and stuff like that. And all these things together can lead to some medical problems like high blood pressure and other things. And like I said, the video for this was on the slide before, so make sure you go check that out. Okay, so that's it for generalized anxiety disorder. Panic disorder. So similar, but actually a little more serious. So this is those same feelings you were talking about, but they can be accompanied with like physical components, like you feel like there's medically something wrong. So basically, the best way to describe this is the person really thinks they're having a heart attack. And if you went by everything that was going on, you'd be like, yeah, they're having a heart attack. But if you hooked them up to machines and monitors, there's nothing wrong with their heart. It's their mind causing all this. And so the only way to really see is to hook someone up and kind of rule it out and disprove it and prove that it's not a heart attack. And then you realize, okay, it's a panic attack, but how do you fix it, right? Because it's in their mind. So for panic disorder, this is where you hear about the panic attack. Someone with panic disorder has panic attacks. Let's write down the definition of panic disorders. So it's an anxiety disorder. Look, another song while we're writing. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I'm like, ah. So an anxiety disorder marked by unpredictable, so, unpredictable means it can happen anytime and it doesn't come from the same reason, the same place. It doesn't even sometimes come from anything. It just comes out of the blue and attacks them. So, unpredictable, minutes long episodes. So, this lasts for a few minutes, which you might be like, oh, that's not a big deal. But if you've ever just sat there and waited for like 3 minutes, it's a long time. So, minutes long episodes. And in those episodes, this is what the person feels: intense dread, intense, right? We've all felt dread before, but like all consuming, intense dread, I can't imagine. In which a person may experience terror, like legit, like we've all been really scared before, but think of like terror, like you're being terrorized basically by your brain. I mean, it's crazy. So intense dread in which a person may experience terror and accompanying chest pain. The songs. So the accompanying chest pains, like I said, they think they're having a heart attack because, like the feeling and the shortness of the breath and the feeling, even the tingling sensations, all those things that can accompany a heart attack can accompany a panic attack as well. Sometimes they feel like they're choking. And again, it's kind of that, like I said, that build up, that, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, like that, I can't breathe, like I can't swallow, I can't breathe, I just can't, get through. So like sometimes they feel choking sensations or sometimes other frightening sensations. And those things could be, all kinds of different things. And it's then followed usually because of worry about a subsequent attack. Like if this happens and this is terrible and this disrupted your life, you had to go to the hospital, whatever, and you don't know why and there wasn't anything that made it happen, you don't know how to avoid it, then all of a sudden you worry more about the next one and when the next one will come and what that will be like. So it took me a while to write this down. That's the movie. Somebody must be singing. Okay. So the symptoms here. So you can have an irregular heartbeat. And so I would suggest writing down the symptoms. So an irregular heartbeat, chest pains, shortness of breath. Notice I'm describing everything of a heart attack. Trembling, dizziness. Those are all the symptoms. And these attacks, like I said, they're reoccurring. Like I said, sometimes there's not even a trigger. You could just be sitting home alone and it just overwhelms you and comes and feels like this. Strikes suddenly. A lot of times there's no warning and then they disappear as quickly as they came. So the fear of a panic attack causes people to worry more, which could then induce another panic attack. It's kind of this like cyclical, disorder. And so there's a video on it. Phobias. I've always known it as phobic disorder. Your book calls it phobias, so I'm gonna, go with that so that everything's the same, but it's kind of the same thing. So a phobia, this is an anxiety disorder marked by a persistent, so again, it's like always happening, irrational fear. And then they avoid the specific object or the specific activity so that they don't feel the fear. So again, most of us have fears, and we even probably joke that we have phobias. Mine, I talk about as being claustrophobic. I hate being in like one-room bathrooms. When they shut the door on the airplane, I know I can't get out. And as you guys probably know, because I've told you a million times, I absolutely won't ride elevators. Elevators just scare me to death. But it's not a disorder because if I absolutely had to ride one, like my loved one's in the hospital, like I'm gonna get on it. Am I gonna be nervous the whole time? Absolutely, but it's not gonna impede my life. If I got on an elevator, I'm not going to literally, my body's not going to shut down. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm nervous and I'm scared and I probably don't want to like talk to you and chit chat and make jokes and stuff. But like my heart's not going to start beating out of my chest uncontrollably. I'm not going to believe myself to be having a heart attack. I'm not going to faint, pass out, that type of thing. So all of us get scared, from time to time, and some of us get really, really scared. But again, it's that line of like really, 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 really scared and like absolutely taking over your life. So, most of ours don't absolutely take over our lives. Like there are people who are agoraphobics. They're so scared they don't leave their house, go to work, go to the store, go out and about. And it sounds terrible. And I think we're all going to kind of experience that in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to be like, how do people live like this? But, stuff like that. So we might say, oh, I'm scared of heights. I'm scared of spiders. I'm scared of snakes. I'm scared of elevators. Maybe you're scared of elevators like me. But again, it's that whole like messing up your daily life and needing it to be fixed in order to just live and live happily, right? I can live happily. I'm scared to death of elevators. And even if elevator was in my life, I could do it every day, get to work or do this or do that. It wouldn't be my most fun part of the day, but I could still have like a happy life and stuff. But someone with true phobia, like they're not going to be able to. Let's write down the definition of that. It's an anxiety disorder as well, marked by persistent irrational fear. Now, if you have better handwriting than me, it might take you a little longer, so you can always pause these. I'm going fast. My notes aren't that neat. And avoidance of a specific object, like of whatever that thing is, the object, the activity, the situation, whatever it is. So avoidance of a specific object, activity, or situation. Many people avoid the triggers of their phobia and live with the disorder, but then other people are like just totally incapacitated by it. So there's a video on it. I think, let's see, I can't tell. I think, if not, I'll put it up there. There's a video from a TV show where a guy was scared of a dog. And I think that's the video I have up. If not, then I'll watch what that video is and I'll go at it. I got to work on the videos, so keep that in mind. Here's a chart. I know it's kind of blurry, but it's from your book showing common phobias. So just like the blue's the fear, a lot of us have fears. And then the green would be if it was like a true phobia. So like being alone, storms. The water one, I guess they mean like drowning, the ocean, pools, not wanting to swim. I don't know. Surely people aren't afraid of like a bottle of water or taking a sip. Closed spaces, woo-woo, that'd be me. Flying. I don't like flying just because of the closed spaces, but like the height thing doesn't really bother me. Blood, height, I guess height and flying might go, and animals. So I guess specific animals from little bugs to snakes to dogs to tigers. I don't know. Like I was saying, the agoraphobic is the person who won't go out. They don't leave their houses and stuff. They don't go into any situations because they fear that it's going to be really bad and have a panic attack. There's social phobias, stuff like that. And then OCD. All right, so obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, let's write down that definition. It's a disorder characterized by two parts: Unwanted thoughts, that's the O, the obsessions, and actions. That's the C, the compulsions, the behaviors. So let's write that down. Make sure you put the parentheses for these things so you know which word's which. So obsessions are the thoughts, because think about it, if you were obsessed with something, you couldn't stop thinking about it. And compulsion, if you like compulsively do something, like you're doing it, it's a behavior. So it's like the thoughts and then the behavior, and they go hand in hand in OCD. So a disorder characterized by unwanted repetitive thoughts, which are the obsessions and actions. That's the compulsions. Now your book said or both. I've never heard of or both. I've always heard that they go together, but that was the definition in your book, so I did it. I can't imagine them not going together. I can't imagine having the thoughts but then not doing anything about it. Or having these behaviors, you don't know why you have the behaviors because you don't know that you had the thoughts. So again, I think I talked about this at the beginning of the unit. We all have these. We all have our little quirks. Probably, maybe even your parents do. Mine is like checking the house to make sure like the stove's off, the dryer, just stuff like that. I'm real like, I'll even turn around and go back and check, okay? But again, it's not a psychological disorder because it's not impeding my life. If I literally could not leave my house, or if I left my house, my anxiety was so high that I couldn't function, I couldn't think, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't get to school and teach you guys because I'm like, oh my gosh, did I turn the stove off? That would be when it's a psychological disorder. That's when it impedes your life. So we all have thoughts from time to time, and then we all do behaviors. So like I have thoughts like, is the stove off? And I do a behavior of going back and checking. And I probably do the behavior more than my husband likes, and it drives him crazy. And that's it. Some people's washing their hands, germs, checking stuff, symmetry, things being like perfectly even, that type of thing. So, but as you see on the screen, it's when it interferes with our life. I just dropped my pen. I'm back. All right, so the obsessions, if you want to write this down, obsessions are the unwanted and repetitive thoughts. They don't want these thoughts. It's like when we were reading the story, in class, the case study at the beginning of the PowerPoint about the guy Mark and cleaning his room and putting like all the hangers like 2 inches apart. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to be trapped in his room. They don't want these thoughts in their head. They're consuming everything about their head. They want to just be fine and normal. They want to get the thoughts out. And so to them, the only way they can get the thought out is to do the compulsion. So it's like if I think I'm dirty, I go scrub my hands, wash my hands real good. That's the behavior. Now all of a sudden I'm like, whew, I can breathe easy. I don't think I'm dirty. But for most of us, that's probably where we'd stop. We'd be like, oh, I got stuff on me. I go wash my hands. So you come out, they smell great from soap, and you go about your life. And you're not even thinking about them anymore. You pick up that sandwich and eat it, and you're fine. Someone with OCD, as soon as the behavior stops, it's like they do the behavior to make the thought go away. So it works, but then as soon as the behavior stops, the thought comes back. And so to get the thought to go away, you got to do the behavior. And then the thought comes back. And it's cyclical. So that's why they'll wash their hands hundreds of times a day where you or I won't. So that's why they do the behavior. So the compulsion, you want to write that down. The behavior responses to the thoughts. Checking something, washing your hands, fixing something. They know it's irrational. They don't want to be like this. It's not like they're living in an alternate reality and they're like, that's how much you're supposed to wash your hands. They know they're not supposed to. They know you don't, I don't, everyone else don't, and they wish they could live like that, but they just can't seem to get over that hurdle because their mind is like basically sending these messages without their consent, and so they can't fix it because they're not even making it happen. It's like it's doing it on its own. And so there's 2 videos on it, and this guy Howie Mandel, this is a really good video to check out. You probably will recognize him. He's a celebrity judge on America's Got Talent now. He used to do the Deal or No Deal with the boxes. I know him from my childhood. He had a cartoon on Saturday morning called Bobby's World, and it's a really good video talking about his struggle with OCD. These are common parts of OCD. So most people, their obsession is with, like I said, germs, dirty, toxins. Then it's something terrible happened. I guess that'd be my little quirk, the fire. And then symmetry, order, exactness, stuff like that. And so you'll see the compulsions kind of align with that. So since they're really concerned about this, the most common compulsion is like washing their hands, bathing, toothbrushing, grooming, doing a repeated ritual. Like we talked about in Mark's case, you know, he had to do something before he left. Some people have to tap the door 4 times. And if you only let them tap it 3 and pulled them out the door to go somewhere, their anxiety would literally take over them. And whereas you or I'd be like, it's dumb, man. If you hit it 4 times, you hit it 3 times this time, like whatever, let's go, we're late. Since they didn't do their ritual, I mean, they are just flooded with those thoughts, that worry, that apprehension, nervousness, the whole anxiety, the whole 9 yards. And they honestly might not be able to function. It might be that serious. And so, and then like checking things, you know, especially if they're concerned something bad is going to happen. That's me, checker. And then PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. Kind of got a long one here. So PTSD is a disorder characterized by haunting memories, nightmares, hypervigilance, social withdrawal, jumpy anxiety, numbness of feeling, and/or insomnia, and it lingers for 4 months or more. Now, the good thing on this slide is I'm not going to make you write down any symptoms because all the symptoms were put in the definition. I wish there was a better definition, and then I could have listed some symptoms, but that's how your book chose to do it. So you kind of do it all in one. So let's take a minute and write that down, and then we'll talk about it more. So PTSD, a disorder characterized by haunting memories, nightmares. I'm writing, and there's another song. Do y'all hear this? Maybe the whole movie is a song, and I just notice it when we get quiet. Sure, I'll learn these songs very well while we're out over the next 2 weeks. Hypervigilance. Maybe you're going through the same thing too at home. Younger brothers, sisters, or something. Hypervigilance. How do you spell that word? That was way off. Social withdrawal. Jumpy anxiety. Numbness of feeling. It doesn't mean numbness like tingling in your arms like you think. It just means like roboticness, like apathy, like nothing with the emotions. And/or insomnia. So remember, you don't have to have them all. You may have, you know, more severe cases have more, or they're heightened, or they have them all, and then less cases don't have as much. Insomnia for 4 weeks or more after a traumatic experience. Y'all hear this? You're welcome. I don't even think it's that loud over there, but it's all I can hear when I get quiet. But that's what I had to do to keep them away from us, from me, and you. All right, so PTSD, let's go through these. So the haunting memories. So usually we think of someone who's been through a really traumatic, stressful situation, and the easiest thing that pops into mind is soldiers. And there's a disproportionately, unfortunately, large, wait, I don't even think I'm saying that right, disproportionately. There is a large, why can't I talk? A large association with soldiers and PTSD. Most of the people that have PTSD tend to be military based. So, because if you think of what they go through, they're on the opposite side of the world. At any given moment, they could be killed. The person beside them could be killed. They could all be killed. And if they're not killed, they could be maimed terribly to where the rest of their life they can't walk. They don't have legs or arms or terrible stuff. And they're always on alert. You know, they can't ever just like sit back and rest and relax and think nothing's going to happen. Like even when they're sleeping, even when they're, you know, trying to relax, they're not relaxed. They're on way more of an alert. They're always listening, feeling, sensing, seeing, looking, all that kind of stuff. So if you lived like that for days, weeks, months, years, I mean, you can't just come back to normal life and just be like, oh, you know, I'm fine. Like your body can't just like shut that off. And so usually when people come back to this life and you know, they don't have to live like that anymore. Their body can't shut it off. And this is kind of what happens. They have like haunting memories because they probably saw stuff that you and I can't even wrap our heads around, like gruesome stuff, nightmares, hypervigilance. Like I said, they're just always aware. They can never relax. Social withdrawal. I mean, Honestly, let's be real. If you felt like this, do you wanna just, like, go out and hang out with your friends? Like, no. Do you wanna just, like, kick it with your family or spouse or kids? Like, you don't wanna do that. You wanna be alone because these thoughts are almost consuming you so much where you can't even enjoy being around other people or even be present with other people. They're jumpy, that anxiety, the numbness of feeling, like I said, they maybe it was just so much that it's like their emotions are turned off. They can't even get happy over stuff. And or insomnia. They can't sleep because again, it's that whole relaxing, but then it's like those memories coming back, those nightmares. You're hearing sounds, you hear something that sounds like something you knew and it transports you back. And it's almost like this deja vu type sense. You're like back, you're in it type thing. So about half of the people that experience some type of traumatic event experience this. Not everyone does, and just because you experience it doesn't mean you will for the rest of your life. You can then go on to be very resilient and stuff afterwards. But a lot of people go through trauma, and it's other types of trauma. You think of someone who's been abused, seriously abused, kidnapped, or like in a bad relationship, an abusive relationship, or a parent, or something like that, and it goes on for years, right? And it consumes their childhood, or they stay with a person for 10 years in a bad marriage. And they live like that day in, day out, walking on eggshells. Are you going to make the person mad? Is the person going to come in and try and hurt you? And you're just always aware and listening and looking and all that kind of stuff. Even if you get out of that relationship, even if you get out of that situation, you're not going to just go back to normal. And so a lot of times they're affected by PTSD as well. The higher the distress, the more likely the person is to experience it, which is why we said a lot of combat veterans experience it. And there's a video for that. And we're going to stop. Thanks.